I came across a quote by Adyashanti just the other day. This actually quite um, well, quite profound in my opinion. So here's the quote: "All spiritual practices that are worth doing are practices that either help us see through whatever we're believing in, or they simply help us let go of our resistance to what's happening." Right? And those two things are actually related. You know, if we're believing thoughts about how life should be, or who should be doing what, or how I should be, those believed thoughts affect how we move in the world. Right? If we're always in a position of judging ourselves or other people, then um, then there's a certain distance from life, and the sense of that is separation from life. Like somehow I'm here, life is happening out there, and somehow um, I don't quite fit. I'm not quite at ease. I don't quite belong. I don't quite feel comfortable in my own skin. Those kind of feelings of separation from life. And what I'd suggest is that they're anchored in some beliefs. They may be very subtle beliefs about ourselves or about how the world or how things should be. Um, but they may cause us to maintain a certain distance, a certain level of caution, certain level of anxiousness about how this body mind moves in the world. Right. So that that degree of caution or anxiety is a form of resistance, right? A holding back. So one of the things in like traditional spiritual communities like monasteries, one of the things that they were common to most of these communities was manual labor, right? A lot of it. You know, there was, and a certain amount of that was just needed in those kind of communities just for the, doing whatever daily chores needed to be done. But they could be, the sweeping the floors, the weeding the gardens, the, chopping the vegetables. It's, you can imagine monks and nuns for hours on end doing these activities just day after day. I once knew a woman, she was probably early 30s, I'd say. She had a PhD, but when she was in the spiritual community, they had her cleaning the public toilets, like every day for the whole day, like 10 hours a day, 7 days a week. And she did it for at least 3 years, right? So over 1,000 straight days of cleaning toilets. So when you're doing that, you have a lot of time to be with yourself, be with your mind, and notice any resistance that may be happening to doing whatever you're being asked to do. And I mean, that would be challenging for anybody, right? But one of the things that those kinds of work responsibilities in some of these communities, one of the functions of it is to wear down this resistance, this where we not only do the task, but then do it with some storyline, with some resistance to it, not just doing it as it is, it's doing it with some sort of storyline. So you can sort of imagine, the monks and the nuns and, um, doing whatever they're doing. Maybe somebody's, you know, weeding the garden on a hot day and wondering what um, Francis of Assisi over there is doing, just hanging out with the birds. Why don't I get to do that? Or, why why do I have to do this at 4:30 in the morning? I could just as easily do it after breakfast. I mean, there can be all sorts of storylines, and one of the things that we can notice in situations like that, we don't have to be in a monastery. We could just be someplace where there's not that much else going on. That we can notice that our um, complaints or judgments or um, justifications for our resistance can be in sort of full bloom um, when there's not much else happening. And retreats are a perfect place to notice this because in a retreat setting where basically all of our needs are taken care of, meals are served, um, there's no tasks to do during the course of the day. And so we're sort of left in the privacy of our own mind for um, what may seem like an uncomfortably long time for some people. So there can be a reaction. There can be the mind might not like that. Can find fault here and there, and so a retreat, if we're, if we allow whatever arises, whatever the mind presents, if we just allow it to be there without getting, without actually believing whatever thoughts may be arising, just seeing what they are without getting sucked into the story, then the retreat can be meaningful, but it won't be difficult. On the other hand, if we go on a retreat, especially an extended retreat, several days or more, and we're left alone with the privacy of our own mind and not much to do, it's really surprising the storylines that the mind can come up with, and they seem justified, right? By that I mean we believe them, and so things that might not bother us otherwise we can find fault with, and um, and those stories can get amplified, right, as we believe a thought, um, and then we get sort of worried about the thought and whether it's really true, and then it's amplified, and then I mean it can escalate fairly quickly from just sort of mild boredom into a level of anxiety or fear or even terror, right? If we allow our mind to just get up a certain level of momentum. So, the thing to do when we find ourselves, the mind spinning out of control, is paradoxically not to resist it. Just see that is where the mind is headed, and what accelerates it is our belief that it might be true. And it might be relatively true. That's what gives it the juice. If there was absolutely no truth involved, it wouldn't go anywhere. But the fact that it can be seen, maybe there's an element that's true, and that's enough to keep it in play. But if what we're looking for is what's really true, what's true under all circumstances, under all conditions, for all people, that kind of truth, then we can see, well, maybe it's not entirely true. Maybe it's partially true, okay, but maybe it's not entirely true. So, do I want to invest the entirety of my belief in it, or can I just see that it's sometimes true, maybe to a certain extent? Okay. but we don't have to, especially if the thoughts are self-directed, um, self-critical, we don't have to um, equate our existence with what our mind wants us to think about ourselves. Right? It's just thought. Right? The thought itself doesn't have any power except to the degree that we believe that it's true. So if the mind gets on a rant, one of the things that we can do is not to try to stop it because that tends to energize it, but we can just recognize, okay, right now the mind is busy. Right now the mind is spinning. Right now the mind's confused, whatever the story is. Okay, so we can ask ourselves the question, can I be okay with that?